All right, everyone, welcome back to AI Paper Podcasts. We're diving deep today into a paper that really stood out to me, LLM-Powered Proactive Data Systems from UC Berkeley. Now, you know we've all been seeing tons of LLM papers lately, but this one isn't just about the models themselves. It's about rethinking how we design data systems in a world where LLMs are becoming, well, everywhere.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This paper is arguing that we need to move beyond just thinking of LLMs as like black boxes and start building systems that can actually understand and optimize the tasks that we're asking them to do.
And that's where this idea of like proactive data systems comes in, right? The paper kind of contrasts these with the reactive systems that we're mostly using now.
Exactly. Think of a reactive system like if you had a simple calculator. You put in a query, it just blindly executes that query and gives you a result. There's no real understanding of the data, the user's intent, or even the potential for there to be errors. And the paper uses a really compelling example to highlight how this can be problematic, especially when you're dealing with complex real-world data.
So let's get into that. The paper uses this example of trying to build a database for police misconduct records. So imagine you have all these mountains of unstructured data, police reports, medical records, witness testimonies, all spread across tons of different files and formats. How does a reactive system even begin to tackle that?
Right. Well, first of all, you run into the sheer volume and complexity of the data itself. You know LLMs are powerful, but they're not magic. Trying to process these huge unstructured files all in one go is just going to lead to a lot of errors. And in this case, we're talking about really sensitive information that has real-world consequences.
Absolutely. So accuracy is paramount here.
Yeah.
And a reactive system just seems like it wouldn't be good enough.
Right.
But it's not even just the data itself that's a challenge, is it?
No.
It's the operations that we're asking LLMs to perform on that data.
Exactly. Imagine you're trying to extract, dozens of data points from these police misconduct documents, names, dates, locations, the types of force that were used, it goes on and on. A reactive system would probably just try to hit the LLM with this giant prompt and try to extract everything all at once.
That just sounds like a recipe for disaster to me.
It really is. And not only is it going to be really error prone, but it's also going to be incredibly inefficient. And this is where the paper's kind of key insight comes in.
All right, let's hear it.
Proactive data systems can understand and optimize these operations. So instead of having this one giant prompt, you break down these complex tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
And not only is that going to improve accuracy, but it also opens up the possibility of being able to use cheaper, more specialized LLMs for those kind of simpler subtasks. We're talking about like cost savings on top of better results.
I mean, it makes sense, right? It's not always about just throwing the most powerful at the problem, but like working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And this kind of efficiency goes beyond just individual tasks. Proactive systems can actually analyze and understand the relationships between different documents and even group them together in a way. That makes future processing even smoother. It's almost like if you were organizing your files before you started working on something, instead of having to dig through a mountain of papers every time you need something.
So we've talked about data challenges, operational challenges. What's like the third big hurdle for these reactive systems?
Understanding user intent. So a reactive system is basically just going to take your query literally. But let's be real, we don't always express ourselves perfectly, especially when we're dealing with these kinds of complex data sets. Imagine you're searching for, let's say, John Smith in our police misconduct database. A reactive system might miss instances where he's listed as J. Smith or John M. Smith.
Right. Yeah. It's like those times when you're using a search engine, you just can't get it to understand what you're really looking for. Like, the information's out there, but you can't get the system to understand your intent.
Exactly. And that's a problem that proactive systems aim to solve. They actually go beyond that literal query interpretation, and they consider user history, potential ambiguities, and even suggest additional information that might be relevant to the user's needs. It's almost like having this research assistant who not only retrieves the documents you ask for, but also kind of helps you to clarify your thinking and explore different avenues.
That sounds incredibly powerful. So proactive systems are all about data understanding, operation understanding, and user understanding. And I guess it really emphasizes that it's not just about the LLMs themselves, but how we integrate them into a system that's actually intelligent and adaptable.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that makes this paper so interesting. It's not just like another incremental improvement in LLM performance, but it's a more fundamental shift in how we think about building data systems in this age of AI.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. We understand the limitations of these reactive systems and the potential of these proactive systems. But I'm really eager to see how these proactive features would actually play out in practice.
Well, let's go back to our police misconduct database.
Okay.
Remember all those challenges we talked about? Let's start with that mountain of unstructured data. Instead of thinking of a police report as just this giant blob of text, a proactive system could actually go through and automatically dissect that, identify and extract the key pieces of information. Like, think about pulling out names, dates, locations, types of incidents, all neatly tagged and organized, so we're not just throwing this whole document at an LLM anymore.
So it's like the system is kind of pre-processing the data in a way.
Yeah.
Creating this structured representation that's much easier for the LLM to work with.
Exactly.
Almost like giving it like a set of cliff notes for the document.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And remember how we talked about breaking down those complex operations?
Right.
Imagine you want to find, let's say, all incidents that involved a specific officer that resulted in medical injuries. A reactive system is probably going to really struggle trying to do all of that at once.
Yeah.
But a proactive system could break that query down into a series of smaller, more focused steps. First, identify all the records that are related to that officer. Then pinpoint the actual incidents. And finally, filter for the ones that involve medical injuries.
Okay.
Each step is a lot more manageable.
Right.
And it's going to lead to greater accuracy and efficiency.
It makes so much sense. It's like divide and conquer, right?
Yeah.
Instead of overwhelming the LLM with this massive task, you're giving it these bite-sized chunks that it can actually chew on.
Right.
But what about understanding the user's intent?
Okay.
How would a proactive system deal with something like, let's say, a vague query, like just officer misconduct reports?
This is where things get really interesting. So imagine a system that actually remembers your previous interactions, almost like it's kind of learning your interests. So let's say you've previously focused on incidents that happened in a specific city. Even if you don't mention the city this time, the proactive system could actually prioritize results from that location. It's almost like having a research assistant who knows your preferences and kind of tailors the results accordingly.
So the system's actually learning from my behavior over time,
Right.
becoming more personalized in a way. That's pretty amazing.
It is.
This all sounds very complex. Like, how do we even begin to build these proactive systems? The paper must dive into some of the nuts and bolts, so to speak.
Yeah, it does. One of the key concepts they talk about is what they call task-aware data pre-processing. So think about it this way. The system could actually pre-build a table of all the officers and their badge numbers.
Okay.
That way, when you need that information, it's instant. It's not waiting for the LLM to go and crunch through tons and tons of documents.
So it's kind of about doing some strategic work up front to save you time and resources down the line.
Right.
It's like building an index for a book so you can quickly find the information you need. But I imagine we have to be careful not to go overboard with this pre-processing, right?
Absolutely. You don't want to pre-process everything. That would be incredibly inefficient. The key is to be smart about what you choose to pre-compute, focusing on the information that's most likely to be valuable across a wide range of tasks.
Makes sense. It's about working smarter, not harder, as we were saying. But, we talk about these proactive systems and all these amazing capabilities. Are we just talking about some like theoretical utopia here? Or is this something we can actually build in the real world?
That's a great question. And the paper doesn't shy away from the challenges. One of the things they highlight is the importance of user feedback. So these systems are not static. They can actually learn and improve over time based on how users interact with them. Imagine the system presents you with a few sample results and asks, "Is this what you had in mind?" And based on your feedback, it can refine its understanding of both the data and your intent.
So it's not just like a one-way street.
Right.
The system is not just serving up results, but it's actually engaging with the user, seeking clarification and learning from those interactions.
Exactly.
So it's this collaborative process between the human and the machine, each helping the other to better understand the data.
Right. And that feedback loop is really important for building trust.
Yeah.
Because let's be real.
Yeah.
No matter how sophisticated these systems get, we still need to be able to verify what they're doing.
Especially when we're talking about sensitive information like this, like police misconduct records.
Right.
Transparency is absolutely key.
Exactly. You can't just blindly trust a black box, even if it's powered by some, super fancy new LLM.
Right.
And the paper addresses this head on. Proactive systems need to provide clear explanations for their actions. It's not enough to just spit out a result. They need to actually show their work. Think about it like a student showing their calculations on a math exam.
Okay.
We need to be able to see how the system arrived at its conclusions, not just take its word for it.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do we actually do that? Like, how do we achieve that levels of transparency? Are we talking about showing users like lines of code or something?
Well, not necessarily. The paper explores a few different approaches for making these systems more transparent. Things like providing comprehensive execution traces or offering interactive visualizations that allow users to really explore the data and understand how the system arrived at its conclusions. It's almost like giving users a peek under the hood.
Okay.
Allowing them to kind of trace the decision-making process step by step.
Yeah, so instead of just presenting like, here are the results, you're actually giving the user the tools to understand the story behind the data.
Exactly.
To see how the system connected the dots.
Yeah, and that level of transparency is really crucial for building trust.
Absolutely.
Especially as these systems become more sophisticated and more autonomous.
Right, because they are becoming more sophisticated and more autonomous. It feels like this is just the beginning.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that this is still a really active area of research. The authors of this paper are really just scratching the surface of what's possible with these proactive data systems.
Well, they've definitely given us a lot to think about. This paper is really highlighting some exciting possibilities for the future of data systems, but it also raises some pretty important questions, like how do we make sure that these systems are being used responsibly and ethically? How do we balance the need for transparency with the need to protect sensitive information? Yeah, those are big questions, and I think it really highlights the need to be thinking not just about the technical aspects of these systems, but also the societal implications. Like, we need to be having these conversations now as these technologies are being developed, not waiting until they're already out in the wild and causing problems.
I completely agree. And it's not even just about preventing misuse. It's also about making sure that these systems are designed and deployed in a way that actually benefits everyone, not just a select few. So for example, going back to our police misconduct database.
Right.
How do we make sure that the system is fair and unbiased? How do we ensure that it's being used to actually promote accountability and transparency, rather than just reinforcing the existing power structures?
Those are really important points. It's like we're not just building data systems anymore. We're building systems that can actually impact people's lives in very real and significant ways.
Yeah.
And with that power comes a tremendous amount of responsibility.
Absolutely. And I think this paper does a good job of kind of serving as a call to action. It's not just a technical blueprint for building these proactive data systems, but it's a challenge to the entire AI community to think deeply about the ethical implications of our work.
Definitely. Well, this has been a really insightful look at the world of proactive data systems. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the technical nuts and bolts to the broader societal implications.
It's been a fascinating conversation. And, I think this paper offers a really interesting glimpse into a future where data systems aren't just these passive repositories of information, but they're active partners in helping us to understand and navigate this complex world.
Couldn't agree more. It's about moving beyond those limitations of reactive systems and really embracing a more proactive approach to data management, one that's intelligent and adaptable and transparent and ultimately human-centered.
And to everyone watching, we really encourage you to check out this paper yourselves and explore some of these ideas further, because the future of data is being shaped right now, and it's really up to all of us to make sure that it's a future that benefits everyone.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us for another deep dive here on AI Paper Podcasts. We'll see you next time with another cutting-edge paper that's really pushing the boundaries of AI and data systems.